in Hawaii and what's going on with the latest on Red Hill, then pivoting to land leases and the negotiations with the military. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suchi and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, aloha, and thanks for tuning in here to Spotlight Now. We are going to get to our first guest in just a few moments, but we always like to start by encouraging those of you who are watching at home to engage in the conversation. There are multiple ways where you can engage. Of course, you can head over to Facebook and insert your comments into the comment section on our Facebook page at Hawaii News Now, or you can also email us at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com. We'll be tracking both venues to get your engagement, get your thoughts as we navigate our way through this conversation.
Yeah, and we've got some great guests for you today. We're starting off with Ernie Lau, of course, someone that our community knows very well, Chief Engineer and Manager at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. So good to see you.
Nice to see you both, and thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always great to see you. You have been working on the issues surrounding Red Hill for so long, and we want to get to that. Before we do, of course, just yesterday, Mahealani Richardson did a story profiling a whistleblower who has come forward alleging that there was a lot more fuel spilled than was initially reported, and basically alleging a cover-up. Did you have a chance to see the story, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did see the story. That was, I thought, first thing is was that coordinated between Mahealani and you folks? But the whistleblower, Shannon Banks, is somebody that I've met before, and I've had a chance to talk to her. I feel that she's a very honest person, and she wants to do good for the community.
What do you think about what she's alleging? I mean, basically, she's saying that we're talking about a much larger magnitude of spill than even the 20,000 that has been reported.
You know, she was in a better place, having actually worked there as the fuels director, to understand what's going on at Red Hill. If I get a chance to look at that data or that information, I'd be glad to look at it. I did see that what little we saw, that at least 20,000 gallons was involved, and possibly at two different locations where the pipe connecting the fuel tanks to the main tank, main pipeline bringing the fuel to and from Pearl Harbor, that broke loose at tank number 20 and partially got loose at tank 18. So that photo I saw in the news story looks like that might be outside of tank 18, because I had a chance to go into Red Hill later that year and with former Congressman Kai Kahele, and I saw that the pipe connecting tank 20 was completely blown off.
You know, there is a criminal investigation that's happening now, a criminal case against two individuals who were civilian contractors with the military. Do you think that the criminal case is appropriate? Is this a criminal case, basically? Were there crimes committed?
Well, you know, first of all, I think everybody's presumed innocent until they're actually found guilty and convicted. And everybody's entitled to a fair trial. So I'm really not I don't want to dodge this, but I will dodge this, because I'm not in a position to say that this was a criminal act or not. And if I haven't had access to the evidence that the grand jury looked at. So I'll kind of reserve judgment on this.
As someone who has, though, been around everything that's happened, were you at all surprised to see some of the things that are coming out now, or the photos, as you mentioned, seeing it for the first time? As someone who is, as you said, taken tours, have been involved and active in this, what was just your overall reaction, knowing what you knew, some of the knowledge and some of the things that you have been warning and alleging of for some time, to be able to see this and hear these allegations that have come forth?
I'll just say simply that I'm not really surprised. We've always asked for transparency from the military, from the Navy, on what's the experience of this Red Hill facility has been over its 80-year-plus history. And we've never been able to get access to all the information, so it doesn't surprise me.
Okay, well, let's move on to the facility itself. You have your own lawsuit now going forward, $1.2 billion from the Board of Water Supply against the Navy. You've been in negotiations with them to help to clean up and to pay for a lot of the damage that was caused by the spill for some time. Why did you finally decide it was necessary to file the lawsuit?
Well, we filed the administrative claim in 2023 through the Federal Tort Claims Act process. So we filed that in October of 23, and we finally heard back in January of this year that the Navy had decided to deny the claim. We were very disappointed, but our board, the Board of Water Supply, decided unanimously to actually file the lawsuit, because that's actually the next logical step. You have, from the denial of the claim, you have about 6 months to decide to file the legal complaint or the lawsuit. If you don't file it, you lose that opportunity forever. We did not want to lose our opportunity. We feel that we have a fiduciary responsibility to represent the interests of our customers that we serve.
And we are talking about billions of dollars that your department has had to spend through various different sources and different means in order to deal with this situation, and that is what is spelled out in this lawsuit. If the Navy decides that, or the courts decide that it is not their responsibility, does that burden then fall on taxpayers? And how do you make up that shortfall for the amount of money that has been put forth by the Board of Water Supply and because of as a direct result of what's happened at Red Hill?
Thanks for a very challenging question. Bottom line, the Board of Water Supply, we're financially self-sufficient. We feel that whatever is related to Red Hill should be paid by the culprit, the people that are responsible for the contamination of our water resources and our land. Ultimately, the Navy should be responsible. And just to clarify, we have not spent $1 billion or even $2 billion. I think that's what the Navy has been given over the last 4 years since the 2021 incident. Our claim is for $1.2 billion. It's really to replace Halawa Shaft, Halawa Wells, and Aiea Wells, which right now they're closed indefinitely because we can't risk turning them back on at this time. So that's really the idea, to recover that cost and some costs that we've already incurred since the 2021 incident.
I'm just curious, in that denial, when you were first given that denial letter, what is the justification? Because obviously the spill was caused by this facility. It seems like a pretty clear path.
Well, sometimes you think things are pretty obvious, and for us, we've had that concern from day one, from the 2014 leak, but they felt that we didn't present enough information to them.
Wow. Let's get to the transparency issue. You mentioned Halawa Shaft, and we know that there's a lot of monitoring of the wells that are still going on your side, and then also on the Navy's side. One thing that you've consistently brought to us is a lack of transparency in terms of sharing of information. Has that changed over time?
It's not really changed, although I think the Navy has taken some positive steps, with their phone app, Navy Closure Task Force, Red Hill. You can install on your iPhone, your Android phone. So they try to provide updates on that in that way. I think that's a positive step. But access to other information, for example, technical reports put out by the Navy, still heavily redacted. And I'll just use this as one example. The Groundwater Protection Plan Update Defueling Revision. This is dated June 26, 2023. They talk about monitor wells to be installed as part of the investigation. But here's the map of the monitor wells locations in this report. And this kind of redaction we think is uncalled for and not justifiable because this is a facility that already the Secretary of Defense back in 2022 decided to shut down. 104 million gallons has been removed. So why keep it all classified and redacted?
When you saw that and you saw this report, what was your reaction? Did you follow up? Did you ask them about, why this information is redacted and shared your concerns? And if so, what has been the response to maybe any pushback that you have received about some of the, not only redaction in this report, but just the overall transparency issues that seemingly continue?
we continue to push forward on that issue of transparency. And actually, we made that point from almost the very beginning, back in 2014. We said to the Navy, just come clean. Just tell us about this facility that's been there for a long time and its experience of leaks and other things, so that we can work on it together and try to address the issues of the contamination of our resource. Unfortunately, they never took that to heart. The redactions have gotten worse in recent years. We do communicate that to the regulators, and I think some of them have pushed back a little bit on the Navy, but there's still a lot of redacting going on.
I mean, that picture is just sort of laughable, that the whole thing would be redacted, that you would not have any idea, even a general region of where these wells are. What is the justification on their side? Is it a national security issue? I mean, what do they say?
That's a question you can ask the Navy, because typically when they redact, they need to cite why they're redacting it, a reason. And this page tells the whole story. There's no notation here on was it a national security issue. Redacting hydrologic information like location of test wells to investigate a contamination problem, I don't think that's confidential, and it shouldn't be redacted. So we continue to push back. Early on, we were asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I refuse because we're a public utility, a public agency. The community on this Red Hill issue, it's extremely important that the community understands what's happening and what we're dealing with. So I have refused for now 11 years to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
And just to clarify again, that what you're showing us here was the redaction of a map of where their monitoring wells for updates would be. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Part of the groundwater monitoring, groundwater investigation.
Right. And so with that being said, and that, that map being redacted, as you are now trying to monitor the current conditions, and they're not even showing you where this monitoring well is, how difficult does that make it for you to be able to get the data, to know where it's from, and how is the Board of Water Supply maybe working around that or with them, trying to monitor these stations when you don't even know where these wells are?
They do show us in different remediation roundtable meetings, where they think they want to put the monitor wells. And at one point, when I think our relationship with the Navy was a little better, we wanted to see if we could collaborate more on locations. But when they put it in the reports that are given to us later, they're completely redacted. So we don't understand why they're redacting things like that. I think it could be better if they redacted only things that are really necessary for protection of critical infrastructure or national security. But information like this, groundwater test results, those should not be redacted.
And just so the public really has context and understands why this is so important, you've told us before, and you mentioned just now, that the Halawa shaft is closed indefinitely. If you can update our viewers and remind them how much of an important water resource this is, what we're missing out by it being closed down, and why you feel the need to have it shut down indefinitely.
Halawa shaft was one of the largest water sources to supply urban Honolulu, capable of producing 10 million to 12 million gallons a day, to supply urban Honolulu from Halawa all the way out to Hawaii. That's currently shut down because of the contamination of Red Hill shaft that was made known to us back in late November of 2021. In December, we shut it down. We're not turning it back on because we can't afford to put fuel contaminated water into our bigger water system serving urban Honolulu. Until we have a better understanding of how the contamination from Red Hill is migrating in the complicated underground aquifer system, we won't turn it on. The other factor of turning it on to is do we inadvertently create worse problems for our future? For BWS, we think about not only the challenges we face today, but we also think about the challenges future generations will face, because ola ikawai, water is life. And as long as there are people on this island, they will need clean, fresh water. And these water resources need to be protected and conserved.
As you have discussed in the past, the search for a replacement or additional wells that could maybe make up the difference was something that was a priority during this time. What can you tell us about any additional water sources that you may have been able to locate, and how is that process going?
It's going very slow, and it's been challenging. We right now have two exploratory well locations planned, sited. One at our IF 497 water tank site, and the other one at our Newtown 550 water tank site. The contractor is actually mobilized to our IA 497 site, and hopefully before the end of the year they'll start to drill the exploratory well. But that's only the beginning step, because after you drill and you test the quantity of water available and the quality of that water, if there's contamination or no contamination, there's still a long process to design and construct a production well facility that will finally put water in the pipelines to serve our community. So that process, right now, we're looking at probably 7 to 10 years.
In the meantime, we're talking 10 to 20 million gallons of water that we are missing out on every single day. I mean, that is an astounding number.
It's more like 10 to 13 million gallons a day with all the 3 wells shut down. We've had to stress our other existing wells. Unfortunately, we have other wells, but we're pumping them harder. And we saw from firsthand when we started to overpump one of those wells too hard, our Baratania wells, the water became much saltier very quickly. So we have to cut back and moderate how we pump at our existing remaining wells. That's why it's really important for us to continue to conserve water, for our customers to conserve water, especially in the Honolulu water system and the smaller Aiea Halawa system that's been impacted because of Red Hill. We have a plea right now. It's been really dry. I think for our records of rainfall in the Honolulu area, August was 18% of normal. Water demand island-wide has risen to hit over 160 million gallons a day. So we're asking our customers to conserve water and reduce their water usage by 20%.
I mean, with that being said, and knowing that, we are experiencing more drought year after year, there are dry conditions, and as you continue to look for additional sources, is there any other types of options that you guys are pursuing? I know that there was a desalination plant, I believe, that you were also working on at one point. What kind of updates can you provide us on other efforts that you're looking towards?
So we'll be drilling more wells to tap the underground aquifer, but we're also trying to reuse wastewater, treat it and reuse it for non-potable uses. And that's really part of our Honolulu recycled water facility that can produce 9 to 10 million gallons of recycled wastewater. Also supplies recycled wastewater to Kahe Power Plant for Hawaiian Electric. That's another step toward diversification of our resources. Right now, for drinking water purposes, we're 100% dependent on underground aquifers, on groundwater for the source of our water. Our seawater desalination project is still underway. It's in the early design stages. We're still going through some permitting and land acquisition matters. But that plant, when it gets completed, will produce almost 2 million gallons a day of fresh water, drinking water from seawater. Those are the options that we need to continue to explore, in addition to reducing how much water we use as existing customers, existing water users on this island through conservation, being more efficient, encouraging people to save water by not irrigating in the middle of the day. Just avoid irrigating between 9 and 5 each day when it's the hottest part of the day. Encouraging developments to look at on-site reuse. Reuse of gray water in the building for toilet flushing or air conditioning or irrigation needs. Look at ways to use less potable water from underground resources.
I'm curious, going back to the Halawa shaft and the wells that you have there, the monitoring wells, what kind of chemicals are you seeing, and what kind of contamination are you seeing? Do you think that do we know where the fuel that was spilled, I know the whistleblower says it's a different amount, but let's say it is the amount that the Navy says it was, where did that go?
That's a question. I don't think anybody really knows for sure where it's gone. Once it's released from the tanks, it doesn't mean that it disappears. It's someplace in the environment, either below the bottom of the tank and above the water table of the aquifer, the top of the aquifer. It could be in that volcanic rock, saturated there, waiting to actually be mobilized by gravity and rain to get to the groundwater and start to contaminate the aquifer. It could be moving in the aquifer itself in directions we don't completely understand at this time. We are picking up PFAS in our Halawa shaft, even though it's shut down. We still take water samples from that pool at the end of that tunnel where people used to see the top of the aquifer deep underground. We're now finding PFAS in that water. We're finding PFAS at our Halawa wells, and also further to the west, our Ka'amila wells. We're finding PFAS there, and we're actually going to put a temporary water treatment system at our Ka'amila wells in the very near future for PFAS contamination.
We are running out of time, but I do want to just kind of bring this back to a macro level when we talk about the military's relationship with Hawaii. And obviously, when we talk about that, and as we're going to discuss some of the land leases in our next segment, the relationship between the Board of Water Supply and the military is one that stands out most because of the alarm that has been raised by yourself and the Board of Water Supply for many years. You continue to talk about the transparency issues, getting information from the military. How would you gauge the relationship at this point in time with the military, and how government should process and move forward when looking at new contracts, new leases, and what the relationship you think looks like moving forward with the U.S. military?
Yeah, I can only speak from my experience and my narrow focus on water. Water is life for our community, and the military also depends on this water resource. So the relationship, I think, over time has kind of ebbed and flowed. There's an ebb and flow to it because it depends also on the personalities of the commanders, of those in charge of the military that come to stay for 2 or 3 years and then they move on. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not as good. I think right now I would say there's a lot of room for improvement. One thing, and I've said this to the military before, engaging with the community here is vitally important to their success, because it is the community that really owns these resources. These are public trust resources. So don't be afraid of engaging with them or having the community ask hard questions. Face up to it and give the answers. Be transparent. Share that information. Build that relationship with the community. With the Board of Water Supply, it's been an 11-year relationship. It could be better, but we understand, that they are doing what they're doing. But what I've seen is the shying away of engaging with the community. I think that's the wrong thing to do. Community engagement is vital to our success. We stand with one voice as a community in protection of our water resources. And the military should just be open to engaging.
Okay. Ernie Lau from the Board of Water Supply, it is always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for sharing what you shared today. That redaction is quite remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be on with Jon Osorio after the break. Stay with us. More on the military land leases. That's coming up.
Hello and welcome back to Spotlight Now as we continue on in our conversation about Hawaii's relationship with the military. We just heard from Ernie Lau. And before we get to our next guest, again, we want to encourage those of you who may be watching at home to engage in the conversation as well. You can head over to Facebook and enter your comments into the comments section, or you can also email us at spotlightnow@hawaiiNewsNow.com.
And we are pivoting from the military's relationship with our water supply now to talking about land leases. And we want to welcome in Jon Osorio, who is professor and dean at Hawaiinuiākea School of Hawaiian Knowledge at the University of Hawaiʻi at Mānoa. Thank you so much for being here. You heard just now from Ernie. I just want to get your brief sort of response to what he shared about the military's relationship with our water supply and the through line you see to the land lease issue.
Well, I think, one of the things he really focused on was the lack of transparency and the inability really to get the military to disclose, right, when there's danger and when there's possible harm to the public. I mean, that's a huge thing, and in some ways, this is really a part of the problem with dealing with this particular issue with the U.S. military, and that is that historically, they've basically been able to have whatever they needed, whenever they needed it, from the federal government setting aside lands, even before the U.S. government took over in 1900, they set aside two huge ahupua on Oahu to make room for, military bases, Shafter and then Schofield. And then in any particular time, whenever there was a need for lands, the military was able to get them. Once they have access to these lands, there's almost no sense from them that they need to report to the general public or to governors or to, I don't know who their reports go to about how those lands are used. We don't really have any sense of, beyond what we were able to see in Koho'olawe, to some extent in Makua, the kind of damage that's done to land. And that kind of secrecy makes it really difficult actually to have a public conversation about what we might be able to use those lands for ultimately.
So let's talk about where things are at right now with the current status of many of these leases that are coming up, and the negotiation process has begun between the U.S. military and the governor. We've heard from the governor about his approach to this. I want to get your take on where you think things are at right now, the response that they've had to some of the concern raised by Native Hawaiian groups, activists, or in just the community as whole about some of their concerns and what you would like to see out of this.
Sure. So, we know that just a few weeks ago, Secretary of the Army Driscoll basically said, we're not going to let this this negotiation take a long time. We want something done within a year. And I wanted to really comment about that because it really points to something that's also present in the federal government that maybe it doesn't have a whole lot to do with just the military. The Trump administration's made it really, really clear that they're not interested in public opinion, public discourse, or local laws or local or state laws when it comes to it getting what it wants. And if the Trump administration wants these leases to go forward, basically what they're going to do is say, it happens now or you get nothing. The governor's response to this has been, I think, disappointing to a lot of us because I don't think that the governor, and many Hawaiians feel that the governor doesn't really understand the strength of the Hawaiian opposition really to the continuation of military leaseholds. Period. It's not just a question of what you can get for these lands, but really what these lands ought to be used for. And this is the central problem that I think really unites the Hawaiian community, regardless of what our political background is that, we believe that land has really that the use of land, that our kuleana over its management, the ability of land to sustain life, right, to provide economic growth and opportunity, the use of lands to support communities, that's the way we approach this. That's what it really means to our cultural practices are really geared at that, recovering land to our care and our tending. And the military's objective here is basically to keep land, regardless of whether they're currently using it or not. Nobody knows whether it's desire to continue to hold lands in Makua, in Paumoho, in Kahuku, or in Pohakuloa really is about actual current use, whether it's about possible future use, whether it's really just disguising the fact that some of these lands are so damaged and so inimical, right, to human life or other forms of life that they simply don't want to disclose anything. And in the name of national security, they don't. When Ernie calls on the armed services really to engage with the public and engage with us in transparent sorts of ways, we recognize that it's going to be hard for the Army to do this. It's even more difficult under the current regime in Washington to be able to discuss, because they're not interested in that kind of public exchange at all.
So the timeline is supposed to be 2029. The governor has said on this program, and as you alluded to, that the Army basically said we want it done by the end of the year. They want to bypass environmental impact statements. They want to bypass
Absolutely.
a lot of the public comment that you're talking about. The governor has stood up a website to try to get people to have a platform to engage. But basically, on this program, he has said, if we don't play ball, it's eminent domain and we get nothing. What do you think about that, where he's at in that space?
I do actually want to return to that website at some point, but as to the question of, whether this land could just be condemned and the U.S. take it all, a lot of us are really sort of playing with that idea in the community. And the first thing is, has the U.S. government indicated that they are going to do this? Because we haven't seen a public announcement that condemnation is in the wings. Is this a private conversation that they're having with the governor? Is this something that's a back channel kind of thing? And if that's the case, we'd like to hear the governor actually say that. We don't know for certain that that's what the U.S. government would do. If the other part of this is, if they did, how would we be worse off than we are now? We got $1 at the original signing of all of these leases. Not $1 a year, not $1 an acre, just the $1. I'm pretty sure that's already spent. How are we worse off? And so then the question becomes, if the worst that can happen is pretty much the status quo, then what is our path forward, and why would we fight? Why would we risk not getting, say, the governor's 5,000, low-cost rental units and the return not of Makua Valley, but just of that leasehold? Why would we risk that in order to negotiate for something much more substantial and much more productive for the state of Hawaii? And my answer, the answer of people who have been looking at this now for quite some time, is let's try and figure out what is the value of that land. We know that the U.S. military spends $10 billion in Hawaii annually, but what is the value of the land that they actually keep from being able to be used productively by the state of Hawaii, by the departments that that minister and tend to the public, or even to the public itself in terms of possible economic opportunities? What is the value of those lands, and how do we actually come to talking about that unless we take the next 4 years, right, between now and 2029, to really have a thorough public conversation about what those lands are, what they could be used for, what they are valued at in terms of real estate, just in terms of real estate, but what their value might be in much larger terms, what their value might be to the residents of Waianae and Nanakuli to have the return of all of Makua.
When you you speak of some of the ways in which the governor is seeking public interest or public, I should say, comment. Yunji mentioned the website. You said you want to get back to that. Do you feel that this outlet is sufficient? And what would you like to see more of in order for engagement by the community to have voices be heard?
Full disclosure, I went onto the website, I looked and saw that there was a place where you could put in comment, but I didn't see a place where you could see what people are commenting. So that would be one of the most important things is, if we're going to give input, I want to see what everybody else is saying. I want there to be at least a semblance online of public conversation. But that really can't be compared to having, public hearings on these negotiations and having people being able to participate and give their testimony and have the opportunity not just to compare your input with somebody else's, but really have the ability to persuade and to get people to come to some kind of agreement and consensus maybe on where we should go forward. I really hope that the governor shows a lot of spine in this and refuses simply to give in to this notion that it's all or nothing here. You take what you can get right now or you get nothing. Here's another way of looking at it. Having these public conversations about land gives us the opportunity, again, to engage with each other and think about what Aina means, not just to Hawaiians, but to everyone here. All of these lands, and not just the ones that have been leased, not just the ones under state control, but the lands that are currently military bases, were stolen from the Kingdom of Hawaii in 1898, when they passed their resolution to accept the cession of Hawaii's sovereignty from the puppet government that they helped to install. All right? So they do this. One of the first things they do is set aside thousands and thousands of acres of land for military bases. One of the first, they also then follow this up with taking actual private trust lands from Emma's Trust and from Hawaii to bolster the areas around Pearl Harbor. This is a government that has taken and taken and taken for its own uses. The Hawaiian sovereignty movement, which really is the powerful engine that looks to the future, that says, look, we've been in this situation under U.S. domination for a very, very long time, for 100 years, more than 100 years, and what we want to do is move us into sovereign territory, making decisions for ourselves, and recognizing that these lands, these Crown and government lands, are actually a basis for economic transformation here. Absolutely are a basis for economic that we do not have control over. What is it going to take for us to be able to convince the rest of the residents here in Hawaii that we would be better off really creating this future for ourselves? If people 5 years ago, 10 years ago, were still afraid of letting go that leash between us and the U.S. government, I wonder if they're less afraid now when they see, really what America is doing to itself in terms of its leadership in the world, its ability to deal with simple public health care challenges, its ability to confront the reality of global climate change and basically pretend that nothing like this really exists, and become a failed empire. This is what we're looking at, and I do believe that Hawaiian people, with the past 30, 40 years of experience in confronting that very powerful nation, the United States, even when it was maybe at its best and its strongest, we have something to say to the rest of the residents here about how we would navigate a future in which we depended on ourselves.
I'm curious to know what you think is the best way forward and what is the best outcome given all that you have laid out and the governor saying, look, my back's against the wall. How do you think this can go forward so that there will be a resolution that you think that would be acceptable to, to all of Hawaii?
Well, the problem is that if the governor feels that his back is against the wall and that he has no choice but to negotiate now, then I think it leads to a very bad outcome. And the outcome is this. I mean, basically we get some money and maybe the release of some lands that the military really doesn't care about anyway. I mean, it's a hand they get to play. It's a resource they get to mess with, and we're no further along. We're still tied basically to continued cooperation with, and I'll be really clear that some people really refer to this as a culture of death, right? I mean, we're talking about weapons. We're talking about weapons testing. We're talking about training for basically, keeping people in line. And that's to me the worst possible outcome. The best possible outcome, which could only happen if Ernie's plea to the military was really to engage with us, engage with the public, engage with Hawaiians, and really talk some of these things through. One of the things we could maybe suggest is a timeline for the military to demilitarize. What lands can you surrender immediately, and how long do you think we need to keep this going to keep your mission intact? I mean, the world is changing. We don't know exactly what the future portends, but getting the military to engage, not just maybe with the governor, but really with the public in a very meaningful kind of way, maybe the best thing we could ask for.
Okay, Professor Jon Osorio, thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. We always learn so much when you're on the show, and I hope that we have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back with Aloha United Way right after this.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahea.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahea for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
Well, we are excited to kick off a new segment here on Spotlight Now. It's called the Community Spotlight, that is actually sponsored by the Aloha United Way. And it really is an opportunity to talk about some of the things that are happening in the community and some of the things that are impacting our nonprofits.
That's right. It'll be a regular segment here. And here to kick it off today is Kayla Keehu Alexander, VP of Community Impact at Aloha United Way. You've been on before. We're so happy to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
We wanted to talk with an update about what you're seeing with nonprofits. We've had a number of nonprofits on this program. We know that you have spoken on this issue as well. There are a lot of changes at the federal level in terms of priorities. What are you seeing on the ground here in Hawaii right now when it comes to all these funding cuts that are either on the way or have already happened?
Yeah, so we are seeing nonprofits impacted directly and indirectly. And when it comes to federal funding, it fluctuates year to year and between administrations. That's not unusual. What's different right now is the speed and the scale at which these changes are happening, and nonprofits are feeling it in a really big way, and they're feeling it really quickly. So right now, we've already seen Programs close. We've seen facilities shut down. We've seen staff get laid off. And then there's a ripple effect of that, which means the staff that's left at these organizations, they have to pick up that extra work, and then burnout sets in, and then they, some of them end up leaving those positions, and we're going to see something similar to what we saw during the pandemic, which is there's an exodus of the nonprofit sector. And on top of that, there's a lot of organizations right now they're competing with each other for whatever funding is left locally. And instead of being able to collaborate and work together, they're seeing each other as competitors.
So maybe if you can talk about, is it, specific sectors of the nonprofit community? Is this happening to everyone, or is there a group or a service that is feeling this the most?
There are definitely some sectors of the nonprofit industry that are feeling this more than others. So for example, we know that Native Hawaiian educational programs have been hit extremely hard. Youth programs, particularly around homeless youth, which is teenagers and young adults, some of those programs have seen funding cuts, and that's a population that already they have no safety net, and so when they experience these funding cuts, they're hit very hard. The population is hit hard, and all the progress that was made with those communities, that gets set back. All the relationship building, all the trust that was built, all the programs and the labor that went into it all gets kicked backwards. We're also seeing, with food security. So we know that there's going to be cuts and changes to SNAP, but it's not just the families that are going to be impacted. The nonprofits who are part of the Charitable Food Network, they're going to be expected to fill that gap, and they themselves are going to have fewer resources. And then with, we're seeing cuts to domestic violence programs as well, and that includes housing for survivors. And what we're learning from some of our partner providers is that victims of domestic violence, victims of trafficking, they're a lot more hesitant to come forward right now, especially if they're maybe underdocumented, because they don't know what's going to happen. So these impacts aren't just about dollars, right? It's about access to resources, access to the help they need. And nonprofits are having to really pivot and navigate around different kinds of barriers that they haven't had to work around before.
Wow, I mean, all of those areas that you laid out, domestic violence, food security, homeless youth, it's hard to think of areas that could be more critical to the social safety net in our community. How are you changing your strategy? I know Aloha United Way does a lot to support the nonprofit community. How are you changing what you're doing to meet this moment and try to help support some of these agencies?
Yeah, we are, we're analyzing, or we're doing a lot of different things internally to try and mitigate these changes for our nonprofit partners. So one of the things we've done is we've accelerated payments for the grant programs that we fund, trying to get those dollars out into community faster. We're also shifting a lot of our grants to unrestricted grants. So that means these nonprofits can do what they need to with these funds, serve their community and whatever that need is, and they can do it without any red tape. And we also have a safety net grant, and so that's a grant that funds nonprofits to provide some of the most essential services, like homeless programs, food pantries, sometimes even medical care. And so those programs, we've been able to actually make some adjustments to fund them for an additional year throughout 2026, so that those programs are there for our community when they need them.
You spoke about just having to rethink about how the way in which Aloha United Way is able to support, and at times it seeming like nonprofits are competing against other local nonprofits. I think one of the unique things about Aloha United Way and the way that you are structured is almost like an umbrella, where you provide that support to not just a specific type of service, but many nonprofits that you ultimately work with and support. And so giving becomes a big part of that. And we know that you kicked off the workplace giving campaign just a few months ago. Our very own Casey Lund was in the streets down there. Talk about the importance of campaigns like the workplace giving, and just the other efforts that you're trying to do to get the message out into community about the importance of community giving back, especially at a time like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now it is workplace campaign season, and nonprofits, they need our community support more than ever. So if you've ever received services from a nonprofit and you have the means to pay it forward and to give back, now is the time to do so. If you have if you work in a place that has a workplace campaign, that's a really easy way to be able to give to your favorite organizations. And even if you don't, you can go to auw.org and you can learn about all our different impact areas, like our safety net grant, like our ALICE initiative, like our 211 statewide helpline, which is an anonymous helpline that anyone can call to find resources that they need. All that's available, and there's a big orange donate button if you feel compelled to, to support us.
Yeah, either within your workplace or just as an individual on your own. I'm curious also about the sort of atmosphere, for lack of a better word, of the nonprofit community, because I know just in speaking to researchers, let's say at UH Mānoa, about the grants that have been cut, there has been this talk of a reluctance to speak out because you don't necessarily want to draw attention to yourself and have your grant cut even more. What are you finding in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, absolutely. So nonprofits are, of course, worried about changes and cuts to SNAP and Medicaid, and if they're going to be able to meet a spike in demand. But while a lot of nonprofits are willing to speak to us at AUW, you're not going to find them speaking out publicly about this. There is a real fear of retaliation, of losing funding, of damaging their reputations, even though these funding cuts are not tied to performance. And some are even worried about their 501c3 status being revoked. A lot of our nonprofits, they are deeply committed to the communities they serve, especially if it's vulnerable or marginalized communities. And so they're going to do what they need to do to protect their clients, which means they're not going to draw a lot of attention to themselves, right? They're going to serve first.
One quick update that I did want to ask you about is the $50 million that the state the state legislature has allocated to support nonprofits. Aloha United Way is a part of that process of the distribution. What can you tell us about that process right now and getting that money out into the community?
Yeah, so that process is moving along. So what started off as SB 933 is now called Act 310, now that it's a law. And our state is putting the pieces together so that that whole process can happen. And what we know is that what was outlined in the bill is that this is going to follow the state's grant and aid process. It's going to be very similar to that. So if nonprofits are interested in applying when that opportunity comes up, they should be kind of gathering those essential documents that you would need for the state GIA. That includes things like your IRS determination letter, your DCCA good standing letter, and of course you need to prove or demonstrate that you've been impacted by these federal funding changes.
Okay, so much information today. Just a final thought from you about what community really can do to help these organizations. We know that they are so important to just living and surviving here in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we get so far because of our community organizations. They really fill all the gaps that we have in our community, things that government just cannot do. So without them, we would be in a much worse off place. So if you have any organizations that you care about, that you want to volunteer at, that you want to fund and support, now is really the time to step forward for our nonprofits.
Okay, Kayla, thank you so much from Aloha United Way. Thanks for kicking off our very first Community Spotlight. We'll be right back after this.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live.
We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahea.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahea for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suchi. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders. And taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, we want to thank our guests for joining us today as we began the conversation about the relation with Hawaii and the U.S. military. We started off with Ernie Lau, who provided an update on what's happening with the continued cleanup of Red Hill, the lawsuits that are being filed, and really some shocking information or lack of information that is being presented and continues to be a challenge for the Board of Water Supply.
Yeah, Ernie Lau really laying out that they are trying to get more information about the monitoring wells that the Navy has in place and the data, and that is just not being shared. The locations and the data itself, a lot of that redacted report we saw there in his interview. And then drawing a line to Jon Osorio and what he sees as a connection between the way the military has behaved when it comes to our water and now what we're doing with the land leases and the negotiations conversations going forward. We've heard the governor on this program talk about how the Trump administration has moved up the timeline and he feels like his back is against the wall. He's got to make a deal. And Jon Osorio basically saying that maybe that there is another path.
Yeah, we've heard from the governor on this program, and he's the way in which he positioned it is we kind of have to take a deal. We have to make a deal because our hands are tied in some degree. But you really heard the pushback from Jon Osorio, who is saying that we can't come at this from a place of weakness. That there has to be that this is a moment for the governor, really challenging Governor Green to really step up and to speak out. He also mentioned some concerns about the way in which the process is being handled and the voice of the Native Hawaiian community and others in the community who have strong opposition to this not being heard enough, and really calls for more public forums to have these engaging conversations.
Yeah, interesting his point about the website, saying that yes, the governor has stood up the website, but you can't see what the whole community is saying. And so if you really want to have a town square atmosphere, then you should be able to see what your friends and neighbors think as well. So interesting feedback from him there. And then finally, our first ever community spotlight, talking to the folks at AUW about the challenges the nonprofits are experiencing, something that we've been talking about for some time on this program.
Yeah, and you can hear you heard the words from the representative from Aloha Inaʻiʻwe talking about the importance of giving and really encouraging the community to find ways to give back because of those significant cuts that are happening at a federal level and the really widespread population of individuals who are suffering because of those cuts. There is a definite need to support the nonprofits in our community, and we will continue to have Aloha United Way as well as other partners come on to talk about some of the good that's also happening in our community through the efforts of the many wonderful nonprofits that we have here in Hawaii.
Next week, we'll be turning our attention to Hawaii Island. Dr. Kima Alameda, of course, the mayor of Hawaii County, will be joining us, along with Stuart Coleman. His organization is working with the cesspool to sewer conversions. There are thousands of those that need to happen to protect the water supply throughout the state. We'll be getting an update on that.
That's right. If you have any questions for the mayor or any questions about Hawaii Island or feedback for us, you can email us at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com. We'll see you right back here next week for that episode of Spotlight Now. Aloha.